This is the TB70 VS from Harley Benton, and it's their take on the classic Thunderbird, complete with that iconic style as well as the reverse headstock. Then on top of that too, you have the mini humbuckers as well as that beautiful sunburst finish. But this one only costs $153. Now before we really get started, I just want to be completely upfront and honest, and that is, I'm not a Thunderbird guy. I love the style of it and sometimes the tone that you can get depending on the model and what you're running through, but for the most part, I don't like the Thunderbirds. They're very weird and awkward to play. Sometimes they are extremely muddy more than anything, and they pretty much always have a really bad tendency to have a really severe neck dive issue. And this one unfortunately is not really that different from all that. First of all, a huge thank you to Harley Benton for supporting the channel by sending me this bass, and a huge thanks to my Patreon subscribers as well. If you guys want to help support the channel and be one of these cool people right here, head over to my Patreon page for things like early access to videos, gear demos, and more. But let's get on with it. Now, while I said those things that I don't like about Thunderbirds, if you do like Thunderbirds, this is kind of a great deal for you. There's quite a lot of comparisons that you can make between the standard Epiphone Thunderbird and this TB70 VS. And there's quite a few things I would say that are pretty much exactly the same, but the Harley Benton comes in at less than half the price too. Starting with the mahogany body, it has that very traditional Thunderbird look, but with a few extra curves thrown in as well that I think work really well for this bass. And as you can see, it has a beautiful sunburst finish, and that I will never deny. Sunburst Thunderbirds look so good, so classic too. The mahogany body overall just has a really nice weight to it, as well as a nice rich and warm overall tone. Then also in the middle of the body, you can see that it has that nice bit of elevated wood to it. I guess a rise or something, but I'm not sure what it's called. But this is actually really authentic to what Gibson and Epiphone already does. And it makes a nice place where you can either put your thumb when you're playing, say on the pickup, or you can just kind of put it right there next to that little bit of a rise. You have a good looking 3-ply white pickguard to it that just adds that nice aesthetic that you're used to with Thunderbirds, as well as 2 mini humbuckers, 3 knobs, the input jack on the front, as well as my most hated feature of any bass ever, the 3-point bridge. Now, if you've seen any videos that I've done on any basses that have a 3-point bridge, you'll know by now, I don't like them at all. They're a pain to set up, they look cool, but that's about it. They don't add anything that a standard Fender style bridge or maybe an upgraded hip shot one wouldn't do much better and just much easier too. I've never liked 3-point bridges, and this one definitely doesn't help at all. The aesthetic of a normal Epiphone or Gibson Thunderbird is there though, because those also use 3-point bridges. I just wish 3-point bridges in general would never surface ever again and just die out completely. Please. But the bridge itself, just throwing away the fact that it's a 3-point bridge, it works pretty well as it can, I guess. For your pickups, you have a pair of mini humbuckers that are Roswell GB4s. And if you know anything about Harley Bentons, pretty much all of them come with these Roswell pickups. I'm pretty sure it's their in-house ones. And Roswell, for the most part, makes good pickups. They are extremely cheap and they work really well. These particular ones are okay in my opinion. While they can sound surprisingly throaty and thick, for the most part, just like most mini humbucker basses of all kinds and most Thunderbird basses of all kinds, they get really muddy, and I kind of just hate that sound. I understand where it can come into play for some people, but for me, it's just never been appealing and never really scratched any itch for me either. Just once your strings start to get a little dead, you can already start to hear that muddiness take over your entire sound. but again, for the most part, they do sound rather throaty and rather thick. For your controls, you have 3 knobs. One volume knob that has a push-pull function. Then with the active EQ on board, you actually have a bass and treble knob as well. And these actually are quite useful and do a pretty good job overall. I mean, a $153 bass that has an active preamp on it is pretty cool. And if you never played a Thunderbird before, standing up, they can be pretty fun to play, but sitting down is a completely different story. It's something where you have to get used to the feel and the length of it all too. They don't play and feel like normal, say, Fender style or even Gibson style, say, SG basses. It's something where the Thunderbird style in itself is much longer, where you kind of feel like you need to move the body over just a bit to be able to properly play it. Then also a thing to keep in mind too is that if you get this bass, you definitely need to get strap locks ASAP, because unless you are playing completely still and as level as you can, if you move up just a little bit, your strap is just gonna pop out easy, especially because of the weight of the bass. You have a 20 fret Blackwood fingerboard, and now this I think is more of just a cheaper ebony replacement that works really well. It has a really nice color to it and a nice feel. On the website, it doesn't say anything about what the frets are, but they're bigger and I'm pretty sure nickel. They don't feel bad at all. I can see them wearing down over years and years and years of playing this bass, but that's just what you get when you have a $153 bass overall. Moving up to the headstock, this is the biggest problem with any Thunderbird, and that is severe neck dive. Really just atrocious neck dive, and unfortunately this bass doesn't fix that at all. It's a pretty common thing pretty much with every Thunderbird that I've ever played, at least, is no matter what, you're gonna have really bad neck dive, and that's just the thing. While you have the overall weight of the bass, which is a nice heftiness, a lot of it is just totally down that neck, and it's not comfortable at all to play, and it just one of those things where you're going to be battling it the whole time. For your tuners, you have these black no-name die-cast tuners that work relatively well. The bass does stay in tune pretty well. Of course, it could do better, but again, $150 bass, you can't get everything you want, and this really makes for a perfect modding platform overall too. But the action and setup on this when it came in was really nice, and it does play relatively nice too. It's just one of those things where you have to get used to playing a Thunderbird, whether you're standing up or sitting down. So overall with the TB70 VS, it's not my favorite Harley Benton, but it's by no means a bad bass. It's one of those things where they take the Thunderbird style, sound, and playability to heart and really just sort of make it their own, but just don't improve upon it, unfortunately. And that's just one of the main things about this base. I wish it could have been more than just their own version of a Thunderbird. But there's still a lot to really like about this. First of all, the beautiful classic style of the Thunderbird shape with their own added curves to it, and then the nice weight to it as well as the beautiful finish. And there are some pretty good tones in this bass, but again, it does get muddy rather quick, especially if your strings are starting to die. But this is also a $150 bass that has all these features, including being a set neck. Now, if you put this toe-to-toe against an Epiphone Thunderbird, I would be curious about that. In my opinion though, they're pretty much the same, but considering the Epiphone is $400 and this is $150, that's pretty awesome to say the least. But of course, as always, let me know what y'all thought about this, and really, I guess Thunderbird styles in general. Again, they look really cool, but very rarely are they just perfected in my opinion. If you like this video and want to see more like it and more bass videos just in general, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to be like these beautiful people right over here and help support the channel, head over to my Patreon page for things like early access to videos, giveaways, and much more. But thank y'all so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and all those things as always, and I'll see y'all next time.